Hi guys, welcome back to a slightly different version of Everyday Fitness. My name is Matthew.
I'm Liam. Hi guys.
So obviously due to social distancing guidelines, we have to do this slightly differently today. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a discussion of sort of what you guys might be currently struggling with. We've got some questions through from people. So me and Liam now are going to basically discuss that and sort of find or try and help you guys get the answers to them and get around them. Okay. So we are going to kick it off with someone talking about, which is probably going to be the case for a lot of people, struggling to keep their step count high. Okay. Now, obviously, because of only being allowed out once a day, and I think that is it an hour you're meant to be allowed out for? They say
I think it's something like that.
Yeah. Obviously, people are now going to be struggling to keep steps up. So this is going to be a difficult one to get around because obviously now we have restrictions. So all I would really say is to ensure that your planning and time management is on point. So basically to ensure you're getting in a daily step, sort of a walk every day, and then try and make sure you're getting the maximum allowed. Okay. If you get an hour in, what's that, 60 minutes? So people are going to be able to get a minimum of 6,000 steps in that time frame. You're probably going to have to then maybe see it as more of a sort of strenuous walk. If you pick up the pace, you can probably get more in. But I think what the issue will be for a lot of people right now is that they just don't plan and time these things. And then it gets to about 7 o'clock at night, and then they realize they haven't been out, and then they're like, well, shit.
Yes. An hour doesn't seem like such a big sort of dent of the day until people go, right, it's time for my walk. I'm like, oh, it's an hour long though. Yeah. But it's important to sort of highlight the importance of preparation and having a set time. Like if you're off work, like most people are at the moment, I know obviously there's a lot of key workers still, but if you're off and you have the ability to sort of work from home still, to know a couple of my clients could work from home still. All I've said to them is just to keep that hour slot or the slot in which they go to get the steps in the same every day. So again, it's sort of like driving home the importance again of routine and sort of organization with it as well. It's nothing different to like your training as well. If you train at the same time every day, effectively it's the same sort of like principle that you're going to go for your steps every day as well. Now, obviously, the secondary issue is the sort of the numerical value and how many steps you can essentially get into that hour. But like Matt said, just make it a little bit more strenuous, I'd say. So if you can hit active, like most people will be able to hit 6,000 steps an hour. It's roughly 1,000 steps every 10 minutes. So if you can pick up the pace by 20-25%, you'll probably get hit like 8,000 to 9,000 in that hour, which is essentially going to be most of your steps, and then maybe around the house work and stuff like that. If you're walking about, going to the toilet and stuff like that. I know it sounds like such a small task, but then that step count will add up, and you'll probably be near enough to 10,000 roughly, which is sort of like a good aim to get to initially. Obviously, everyone's got different goals and stuff with it, but I would essentially, like Matt said, just ensure that you've got some sort of organisation with it first and foremost before you even sort of look at how many you can get in. Say, right, when can I go each day? Obviously, there might be an anomaly and you might not be able to get them in at the same time every day, but try aim for sort of as much sort of scheduled time as possible. Just do it. That's what I do, and I think that's what Matt does as well.
Yeah, I think that's the main issue people are going to have with a lot of this is just time management and routine. And it's going to be the same when it comes to training as well. I've spoken to a lot of people about motivation for training, and they've sort of lacked motivation to train at home. And I think it's just because, I don't know if you found this with your clients, if they've said that, but I think what a lot of it comes down to now is people are sort of not trying to stick to a routine. They're just like winging their day. So if you actually set slots for walks, set slots for actually training, that's going to keep you accountable, and that's going to keep you able to basically stick to those things. And again, I know a lot of people underestimate how many steps they probably do at work. Even if your job's an office-based job, you probably have to get up, walk to the toilet, which might be further away than it is now in your house. When you go for lunch, that might be further away. People now, literally, if they have nothing planned for the day, even in and around the house, like you were saying, housework, it's going to be so easy for people literally just to sit and do absolutely nothing all day.
People also need to realize the importance of what's going to happen to them, your stress levels in particular, if you're not getting out. It's not just down to light exposure. Like we've talked about this in the past, how obviously that can decrease stress levels, improve sleep, as sort of secondary effects. But it's not even just that. It's if you're sat in the house all day, I know this is with me, like the same with me. If I'm just sat in the house all day, even if I've trained, I need to get outside. I need to just like get some fresh air, just because I just feel like there's nothing, like I'm not existing almost. Like I know it can get like a bit sort of like, I don't know if it's like psychology based or not, but I just feel like there's nothing sort of keeping me about. I need to get outside, and I think that's what most people sort of overlook and neglect. Like they don't even feel like it's important to get out. Like they just see it as a numerical value of I have to go outside to get my steps in. Like there's obviously the bonus of it, but don't just look at like going outside as just to get your steps in. Look at it as like a stress relief as well, I'd say.
Yeah. So plan, routine, make sure in that hour you sort of do as much as you can.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Have you got one?
Yeah. So I've also got another question, and this one's sort of training based. So running along the same principle, just not knowing maybe what is best, which is understandable at this time. Obviously, it's something that everyone sort of wants to know. It's sort of the golden ticket. Now, the question is, so should I be sticking to a routine that I would typically do in the gym? So this is sort of volume-wise. So, for example, 3 sets of 8, 12, 15 reps, whatever it be. Or should I be doing more due to not having the correct equipment? Now, the first thing I'll say is it's not about what you do. It's about how you do it, really. And obviously that involved the big sort of cursor on that, the highlight cursor is the intensity of what training you're doing. So whatever you're training for, so whether that be for retaining lean muscle tissue or even to drop body fat, your training still has to be at the intensity that it was when you were training in the gym. So obviously you're not going to have, or most people aren't going to have maybe like power gyms and sort of advanced equipment at home. If you're lucky enough to have them, then just use them as, to your advantage, I'd say. But in sort of this question, so she's ordered resistance bands. So if we're on sort of like the resistance bands sort of topic, there is a lot of exercises that you can sort of substitute, which this person has, which is great, by making sort of makeshift weights and stuff. But I would make sure that first and foremost, the intensity's through the roof effectively. Now that comes with a lot of other questions of how do I increase the intensity. Now, a couple of methods that spring to mind and that I put into my program, I know Matt's brought into his, is decreasing rest periods. Okay, so they need to be decreased just because you're not going to be, not necessarily working as hard, but we're going to be working sort of more to failure or closer to failure with reps in reserve and stuff like that effectively. Now, I'd shy away personally from initially, so if you just start training, I would personally not go for reps. I'd try test what that failure rep range is and then work from there. Just because if you continue to do, say one of the exercises that you're doing is just a body weight squat. If you're doing 3 sets of 8, for example, the 8 reps might feel really quite easy, but that might just encourage you to keep going because it's easy. Whereas we need to be knowing where we are intensity-wise. So really sort of maybe work on the RP as well, sort of that sort of spectrum, and seeing how many more reps you could possibly get and then working from there. So if you can possibly get 15 as your failure, for example, then take that figure and work from there, as opposed to going and assuming that you can only do 3 sets of 8 or something. Rep ranges are going to change. It's just what's going to happen. But it's not necessarily doing more because of the lack of equipment. It's just using what we have and working to them intensities, is what I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, the big one is that we have to train, like you said, to a similar level of intensity, if not perhaps even more than what we were doing in the gym. Like you said, training to or very close to failure. So in terms of volume as a whole, with stuff like sets and stuff like that, personally, I would try and keep that low to begin with, because I think what a lot of people are underestimating is how long this could last. So if you start with volume very high, you have nowhere to progress. So we need to make sure this is progressive as well. Which again, if we can train this way where we're still having it programmed, that's going to be an advantage, because we can then progress it. So start volume low in terms of like sets, and then you can build it up. In terms of reps, again, it's going to depend on the exercise, depend on the sort of level of resistance you can sort of build. But as a general rule of thumb, reps will probably be higher, just because you're going to have to train to failure. You have a little bit less resistance, so reps will tend to be higher. So if you were to try and copy the way you were training in the gym and that didn't bring a level of intensity that was required, then you would maybe run the risk of losing muscle mass, which we don't want to do. So make sure you train at high enough intensity is key. Like Liam said, you can look at doing stuff like rest, look at stuff like tempo, so how fast you move, doing the movement. You can look at bringing in stuff like isometrics, or like holds, supersets, whatever, mechanical drop sets. There's lots of different stuff you can bring in to make sure intensity is up there, but that's the main thing you need to get at. So your style of training and programming will have to change to adapt to that.
Yeah, I'd also just say, whilst on sort of the what to change and what to keep sort of topic, I would make sure, obviously it's going to sound simple when I say it, but you need to be accountable for your training. Okay, so you need to be able to track it as well. So I'd say for the first week, 2 weeks, it might be a bit more difficult, not in terms of sort of actual sort of strength and in a physical sense. It'd be more getting used to what you can actually do, because obviously you're not used to this. Now, none of us are. Like, the reason we've got gyms is because we don't want to train at home effectively, just because it's not seen as an efficient method. But now that it's sort of all we've got to work with it. So ensure that you're following a program is what I'd say. And with that, obviously previously I did say not to just follow a certain rep range to work to intensities specifically. But once you've found that rep range within them intensities that we're going to begin to then push on and work from, then start to track your reps. Obviously, it's going to be a little sort of skewed sometimes, just because, for example, the position that you hold a resistance band for certain exercises is going to change set to set. So you won't be able to measure progress as much, I'd say, as in the gym, but you'll still for sure be able to measure it. So don't neglect that. Don't just go into each session and go, oh, I'm going to do this. Have a plan and follow it with intent is what I'd say. That is probably the most important thing before even sort of deciding what sort of exercise choice and stuff, because that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Just quickly on the sort of progression side of things. I know a lot of people have, again, this will be once you've sort of like worked out the exercise, worked out level resistance, but a lot of people have spoken about like doing time sets and not even worrying about reps. So doing time sets and trying to work to failure within that time, and then to progress it as the weeks go on, you can just increase the amount of time you're working for, which is a good idea, and then it'll be playing around with stuff like that. So like Liam said, it's new to all of us and it's a challenge to all of us. So yeah, and just lastly, just to cover it, obviously, the goal we're talking about here is retaining muscle mass. So it's going to be very dependent on your goal in terms of what you're going to do. And we're not saying one way of training is right and one way of training is wrong. We're just saying if your goal is to retain muscle mass, which it will be for a lot of people, and a lot of people might not be aware of that, but if your goal is, like Liam said, to drop body fat, then you want to retain muscle mass. So for a lot of people, training this way is going to be more beneficial for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Should I chuck one out?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is talking about sticking or struggling, to stick to a certain calorie target now that they're sort of surrounded by food and cravings being higher and stuff like that. Which is, again, going to be difficult for everyone. And again, it's going to be almost in a similar manner to the first question, I think, in terms of having routine, having structure. Because the issue is with this is that we're surrounded by food, times that with stress and emotions, given the situation, times that with boredom, is probably going to lead for a lot of people to emotional eating. So what we need to try and do is, one, manage stress, which is going to come down to, again, being productive, routine, like we said, getting outside, stuff like that, training. And then we need to manage boredom, which again is going to be down to productivity. So like we mentioned at the very beginning, it's going to be very, very easy for people just to sit at home, not really do much, and just sort of then let these things get on top of them without them maybe even realizing, like it's very easy to sort of go to the cupboard, snack on like 4 or 5 biscuits, and then 4 hours later forget you even had those things, and then go back and have more. So it's trying to make sure we're trying to stay as productive as possible. And one thing I would definitely do is sort of, one of my biggest advices for this would be to pre-track and still pre-plan your food intake. Okay, because if you do that, if you pre-track it, you know exactly what you can have, and then that's going to sort of set you up for the day. And if you know what you can have and know what potentially is going to take you over that calorie target, you're much more going to be aware of it.
Yeah. I'll just add something, just calorie-wise. Obviously, food choices then come into that as well. So obviously, it's not like breaking news to, if you're in a calorie deficit and already struggling, not to be eating dense calorie food. So be eating fibrous foods, high volume, low calorie. So your typical, so I'd be having maybe possibly oats, a lot of leafy greens, just something that's going to keep you fuller for longer. Now you've already heard that before, but again, it's nothing new, but it's something that you need to remember and need to keep ahead of it. And like Matthew said, I would probably advise pre-tracking, so you know what to have through the day. So you can almost like sort of play around with it as well. So if you've already tracked it, you know what you're to have, you can decide at the time where you are actually hungry, over habitual hunger. So once you get past that, you can decide what you actually sort of kind of fancy at that time. So if you've already got your tracked meals there, you can actually pick from the list on MyFitnessPal. If that's what you're using, you can sort of pick, or what can I have right now? What do I actually want? And then throughout the day, just keep yourself busy. I know it sounds really quite simple, but it's genuinely effective, because most people, in my experience anyway, the emotional eating sort of thing does come from obviously stress and stuff, but also boredom. Now, boredom is something that is already sort of absolutely massive at the moment with a lot of people, and you've got to think we're only a week in, so we could be here for a long time. Yeah, this could be three months, could be more. Yeah, genuinely get used to it, and that's really hard to hear, but you need to, if you manage that now and sort of put into place like a schedule, even if it's a food schedule as well, the more organized you are, the more you will benefit and the more you will find it easier rather. So that's what I'd sort of like be your go-to straight away, is nail your food choices, okay? Pre-track them, make it stuff that you actually still like. Don't put stuff in because Instagram told you to have it. Do you know what I mean? Don't have spinach smoothies if you don't like them, or you're not going to actually enjoy it, because I just said we're going to be here for a long time, most probably. So make it something that you're going to enjoy still. Obviously, we've got summer coming up still as well. So hopefully that'll decrease some form of stress. It's not going to be dark nights and stuff like that. But we need to make sure that to stick to that goal, every sort of factor possible that comes into that calorie target is manageable effectively. That's what I'd say. But yeah, just keep. Obviously, there's then another route of sort of going into combating hunger. Now, one thing I'd quickly say is I'm not promoting fasting at all. That's a big disclaimer. But pushing your first meal back, there's no harm in that. Genuinely no harm. If you're struggling with calories and you've already tried numerous things, you've brought in higher volume, low calorie foods, you've sort of brought in maybe caffeine as an appetite suppressant, stuff like this isn't working, then there's no harm in pushing your first meal back. Like I used to do it all the time. I used to have my first meal at like midday. Now I know there'll be some science expert out there that tells me breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but unfortunately I don't listen to that. But yeah, the point is, if you can eat in within like an 8-hour window, there's no harm in that, genuinely, and it might keep you, again, might add something to sort of like the structure principle that we just spoke about, and keeping you sort of accountable. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, again as well, just shop smart.
Yeah.
If it's not in the house, you can't have it. So yeah.
And you're only allowed out once. You can't go back out.
Yeah.
Right. Next question. So this is sort of in relation to training again. So switching back over from nutrition, and this is regarding resistance bands. Now, this particular person has obviously seen a few people use them, and has obviously seen that they're quite efficient and advantageous in some respects. Now, this person's just wondering whether doing lots of cardio and body weight workouts are essentially going to lose muscle mass that this person's already worked hard to sort of retain and to build on. Now, obviously, there's just sort of a list of the exercises here, so it's hard to sort of digress somewhat. But all I would say is just ensure that intensity is there. Again, it's just sort of like drilling that home. So if you're not sweating, and well, I've phrased that poorly. If you know in your own mind that you're not working hard enough, then guess what? You're probably not. So ensure that, again, what we spoke about earlier with the set, the routine, the volume, stuff like that, intensity, I'd be making sure that obviously you're hitting your major muscle groups. So I'd still be sticking to probably the split that you were doing in the gym. If it was a push-pull leg split, upper lower, whatever the split was, I'd try substitute them same exercises into a program with the new resistance bands. Now, obviously, that's maybe difficult for you in itself, but there is a lot of help out there. Me and Matt put a lot of content out, training-wise, to sort of help people with training in particular and keeping intensity nice and high. But to answer the actual question, I'll just digress slightly, put a quick disclaimer out there. Doing lots of cardio. Now, obviously, it's difficult for us to be doing actual cardio in terms of sort of steps and CV fitness, but I suppose if you're doing the typical CV exercises, so like maybe HIIT workouts and stuff like that, then I wouldn't just drop it, but I would try to incorporate the use of resistance bands. Now, obviously you've ordered them, which is great, as I said earlier, but try use them in a way that is going to mimic your gym training in particular. So if you are typically on a lower day doing squats, hamstring curl, leg extension, for example, there are ways that you can mimic each of them exercises, and to quite an effective degree as well, I'd say. Again, then it just comes into intensity. So you need to tie the two together you need to work out what exercise you're going to do, but then also the intensity on the other side. And in essence, it's going to be sort of key to retain muscle mass as opposed to build on it. Now, we can sit here and say, oh yeah, with these exercises that we give you, you can gain muscle. But that would essentially be a bit of a lie, because it's going to be really difficult to sort of build lean muscle tissue at this stage. But it is important, regardless of whether your goal is to drop body fat, even if it's not to do that, then the chances are you probably will achieve that. In essence, if you're sticking to a program that is designed for you to build or retain muscle mass, the chances are you might drop a little bit of body fat, but it's going to be more important to retain what muscle tissue that we already have as opposed to build on it. But the resistance bands are going to do that. They're going to do that, as I said before, if you work into that high intensity that we spoke about previously.
Yeah. There's not really much more to add to that, in all honesty. Resistance bands are being used so widely, and you see them a lot now because they have the tool to help make sure training intensity is there to sort of follow a similar training style of the gym. So that's the purpose of them, or that's what they're being used for. So that's the tool and the benefit they have. So yeah, you want to retain muscle mass, train with enough intensity. Cardio might take away from that, potentially, depending on what type of cardio you're doing. So I would prioritize the resistance training personally. And yeah, you could potentially add muscle mass during this time, potentially, if your training is programmed for progression, which we just spoke about. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily impossible, but it would be harder. But yeah, I haven't really got much more to add to that. The only thing I would probably change just slightly would be, if it was me, training split wise, I would probably make sure for definite that you train in each body part 2, maybe even 3 times during this time, because even though you train to failure, because there's not as much resistance there necessarily, your body's actually probably going to be able to recover quite well. And if you give them that stimulus maybe more frequently through the week, that might play better into the hands of retaining or adding muscle mass.
Yeah. Happy days.
Have you got any more questions or not?
No. I thought that we could just maybe answer a couple of the, not necessarily frequently asked questions, but maybe struggles that people may have at home during this time. So one thing that I'd probably say that people sort of don't necessarily or overlooking a little bit is the whole preparation aspect, not just when it comes to training, but also nutrition as well. Now, I've had a couple of people that have struggled, not necessarily with hunger, it's the actual sort of, they don't have sort of anything to get up for necessarily, so they don't see necessarily maybe the point in preparation, whether that be for meals or whether that be for just scheduling things for throughout the day. I just want to sort of drill home how important routine is to stick to. Now, it's not just, routine's not there just to keep you sort of, oh, it's 1 o'clock, it's time to go for a walk. It's to keep you just in line and keep stress low as well. Now, if you've got no routine, your stress will go through the roof. It might not happen that day or the day after, but once you slip out of routine, so one aspect of sleep, routine in particular that I've seen drop for a few people is sleep. Now, it's so easy, isn't it, to just binge watch Netflix when you're at home, or Amazon Prime, whatever it is. You can just watch loads of it, and then go, oh, it's all right, I can watch another episode because guess what? I've not got work in the morning. This is only gonna last for so long, and when you have to then come out of that routine into your usual routine pre-coronavirus, for example, it's going to be a lot harder and just put a lot more stress on your plate than's needed. So don't slip out of that routine. And if you have slightly, don't worry, because you probably caught it early enough to get back into good habits. I'm not saying it's necessarily what.
No, go on.
I'm saying it's not necessarily sort of the worst thing in the world to have a late night here and there, but I'm saying don't take it for granted in the fact that because you're off work, you can just get away with it over and over again. I'd just keep it nice and balanced. That's probably the healthiest way. Don't obviously set your alarm for 5 a.m. necessarily and go, oh, this is what time I used to get up, because you can get up slightly later if you want to. Just ensure that you've got things that are sort of keeping you grounded and keeping you in place for that next day, for example. Just don't neglect it, is what I'd say.
I've seen so many. Obviously, it's probably slightly jokingly, but at the same time, it won't be a joke. So many like memes and stuff going around where people have been like, my new sleep time or my new sleep cycles like 4 a.m. to like 12 p.m. Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Seen so many of them, and it's just like I mean, you would think right now people's health would be like at the top of their priority with everything that's going on. And again, I think sleep's one of the most sort of undervalued thing anyway, and people don't see the importance of it. But like, no matter what your goal is, your goal might not be fat loss right now. Your goal might not even be muscle retention. Maybe that's not even a thought to you. Maybe your goal right now is just to sort of stay relatively active and get through this period. But I think what we can really, or should really be focusing on right now is just health, because you now have a period of time where well, again, people might still have stuff going on, might still have work, even if it's work from home, but most people are going to have a lot more time in their hands now, which they can use to really sort of drive home things that are going to help improve their health, and sleep's going to be one of them. So if you let sleep slip during this time, then you're literally, you're doing yourself more harm than good.
Yeah. What I say is as well, I was thinking about this the other day actually, is most people who are, or not most people who are seeking, but most people who maybe require more help than others are, in my experience, aiming for fat loss. Now, what I would say is, given this time and the time frame that we are likely to be in this sort of situation for, whether it be 3 months, whether it be a little bit longer, it is an absolute perfect time, in my opinion, to nail your goal if it is fat loss. Now, 12 weeks is a nice lengthy period. I predict it's maybe 12 to 16 weeks now. Obviously, nobody knows. But in that 12 to 16 weeks, if we just take that numerical, you can do a lot of damage in that 12 to 16 weeks, good and bad. Now, we're not going to talk about the bad because it's trying to be glass half full. But in that good sense, if you can nail your goal now, you don't have all them distractions that are usually sort of in front of you when sort of society's alive and kicking, essentially. Now, most people struggle when it comes to fat loss with obviously sort of maybe saying no to nights out, to social events, put stress on people, maybe the job's stressful. If you've got 12 weeks off, if you think about this, if you've got 12 weeks off right now, you've got nothing stopping you to achieve your goal. You don't have work. Most people are still getting paid by the government, or sort of like a subsidy of it. Then stress is already going. Obviously, stress is pretty high given the circumstance, but it should be low due to sort of the external factors that normally we would face and would normally increase that stress. Effectively, you could do a lot of good in this time, and it gives you that sort of period and that foundation to really work on things that particularly you struggled with in the past. So if it was, for example, not being able to maybe say no to a night out, or maybe buying shit when you're at the shops, something like that, you don't have as many opportunities to do these things now because of the restrictions that are in place. So if you think of it in like a sort of optimistic sort of sense, then you should be able to do a lot of good. Like, obviously we need to ensure that training, nutrition, your routine, your sleep, your stress, they're all managed perfectly or as best as they can be. But then from there, there's really nothing in your way to sort of stop you achieving what you're setting out to achieve. Obviously, that is sort of similar for people in a mass gaining phase, but obviously mass gaining right now is going to be a lot more difficult than maybe it could be when in normal routine. But it's the same sort of scenario. You can't go out and piss up your money up the wall, and then your training be shit for 2-3 days. It's going to be really hard unless you're drinking inside by yourself. That's another conversation. But like I said, realistically, you could do a lot of good, is what I'd say. So if you look at it like that and give yourself sort of like a plan, even if you to write it down, like some people work good with numbers and with charts and diaries and shit like that. So if it works for you, do like a 90-day plan or something, do like a 12-week plan and just get it started now, because in 12, 16 weeks, you could drop the weight that you want to lose in order to then kick on when we reopen the gym and stuff, and when sort of normality resumes, then you can maybe then kick on into sort of your next sort of goal. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's a good positive note to end it on as well. Just realizing that look for the opportunities in this, and now you have a great time to actually put a lot of effort into whatever you want effectively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah, I think that's everything. Just remember, folks, get innovative with your workouts as well. Don't just assume that it can't be done because you don't have a leg press in your house, or you don't have a unilateral pull down. You can just work around it. But just keep smashing your goals, is what I'd say, and keep positive. I think is the most essential part. Stay in your routine. That's all I've got to say.
Yep. Happy days.
Well, this has been Everyday Fitness, live from both of our homes. Have a great day.